So we're speaking to Ismael Peña. Thank you very much for coming
Thank
along.
you.
And my question to you is, the very first question is, why do you think there was a need for a specific PLE conference?
I think there are two main reasons for having a PLE conference. One is all the way we've done until now, not until this conference, but until these days. And the other one is what's going to be next. So the first one is that for the last maybe 5 years we've been talking about personal environments with this name or with other several names. And maybe just 5 years ago it was just a very techy thing about XML and people putting gadgets all together. But we've succeeded, I think, in taking it out of the geeky stuff and a wiki talk and putting it into the pedagogical discourse, the pedagogical debate. So I think it was important to meet here just at this right point, at this moment, next month or a previous month, just to say, okay, what do we've got until now? We've got several approaches. Most of them are not compatible. Most of them are even divergent. So maybe we should just sit together, see whether we think we're talking about the same thing, and if we are, see if we can make it converge, or if not, at least to try and build bridges. That was our first reason. And the second reason is having done that, so what's going to be next? And the PLE is not about, as I said before, about technology or even pedagogy. I think it's about the huge change that is happening in society, not only in education, but in all aspects of life. So the PLE is like, okay, let's call it PLE, we can call it whatever. And talking about the PLE, we are actually talking about what's happening in our society. So sitting together and talking about what's happening in educational institutions, it's talking also about economy, it's talking about politics, it's talking about policies. So I think it's an excuse to reflect about what's going to be next. So I think that's 2 points. One is what's the way that we run until now, and the other one is what's going to happen in the next years maybe.
Okay, thank you very much. And so we are now coming towards the end of this very first PLE conference in Barcelona. Can I ask you your impressions?
I'm positively surprised, and I cannot want to use the name surprise or the word surprise, but it's the only one that came now to my mind. To see how everyone has his own perception of what a PLE is. There are many people that think that PLEs are something really, really different from other people, especially because it's not about technological gadget, it's about the concept of life, or at least a concept about education. And there's really very different perspectives. Most of them, I don't think they're gonna end up together in the following months or years, but I think there's a very strong will to understand each other. This is a very, very strong point that you don't find in many, many other disciplines. And not only about understanding, but trying to build these bridges. Bridges which are not of understanding, are bridges to change your mind if you want in the future. So if now I think that the context is A, and I think that PLEs is A, maybe I will realize that the context was not A, or that the context is changing towards B, and I will say, someone talked about B in Barcelona, and their concept about PLE was that other one. So how do I change everything I did in my classroom or in my institution from A to B? So I think that we're seeing all these two things. One is understanding, and the other one is saying, let's not get stuck in one concept or one way of looking at life or education. Let's see which are the ones that are at stake. And if mine is this one, it might not be that one in the future. So I want to be able to change my concept or whatever I'm doing in my classroom.
Yes, thank you very much. And then a specific question about your participation and contributions to the conference. This morning you presented a keynote,
Mm-hmm.
and you presented it to an international audience. You presented in Spanish, but some of the audience members did not speak Spanish. For me, it was an aha moment of, oh my gosh, I've been missing all of these wonderful contributions, these wonderful conversations that people have been having in Spanish and Catalan. So can you tell me a little bit about the challenge of presenting to an international audience, how you went about it?
Well, I think that the challenge, there's a first one, which is language. So you really have to both sometimes speak in a language which is not yours, sometimes speaking a language is yours, but it's going to be understood in another way because it's mediated by the translator. But mostly you really have to sort of be aware that there are other contexts. As I said before, it's not exactly about talking about a specific thing, but about talking about specific ways of understanding life. So just before the keynote, we were talking about institutions and the industrialization of education. And we said, well, industrialization might be not a good thing because it's one solution fits all, which is not sometimes that good. But at least in continental Europe, we reached universal education for everyone and free. So this is a thing that it's that real in continental Europe. But if you go to North America, universal is not that clear, and free is not exactly that clear, especially if you put the quality driver too. So when you talk about it's not that bad to have industrialized education, you will have to be aware of which context you're in. If you're in a welfare state like France or Spain or Germany, it's not exactly the same thing that you're talking about Utah, you're California, or other places where education it's quality if you pay a lot, and it's not as quality if you're not. So I think the main challenge of having a broad audience and international audience is not language, which is absolutely, but it's trying to understand how they are looking at the things that you're talking about, especially how they will understand what you're saying, which words are not understood in the same way depending on what is your background, what is your context, and even what is your feelings, personal feelings about that.
Okay, thank you very much. Very, very good points.
You're welcome.
So thank you very much, Ismael Peña, for your contributions today and for your contributions to the entire conference.
Thank you.